I guess this is Yoko Taro stuff. I had the first episode good. Like, I understood everything was going on, and then we get to episode 2, and it suddenly starts getting, like, I don't know, weird. Just getting very weird. Obviously, the whole aspect of making you cry for a robot, which, good on you. You pulled it off, I guess. Got me a little emotional at the end there. But yeah, I think, honestly, everything kind of makes sense with this episode. I think the only thing that really kind of threw me off was the very end. At the very end, when it starts to talk about the parents and then being in solitude, and then everything's no good or something like that. I'm like, okay, you lost me. I have my theories, but we'll get into that as we get into it. But no, episode 2, pretty darn solid. Once again, kind of really developing this world and doing a really good job kind of building things up, and I do appreciate that. Again, like I said with my first episode impressions, I just love this world, and it's something that I've always wanted to jump into, just never did. But no, it kind of give us a pretty clear picture on what all happened with this world. Back in 5012 AD, we had the invasion of these aliens. The aliens sent these machine life forms down to take out humanity. Humanity was pretty much wiped out. The very few that remained to live ended up escaping to the moon. And that's where they kind of made their base. And there's kind of been a split, apparently, where you have the remaining people that left on the Earth are the resistance, and they are trying to fight back the entire time. This Council of Humanity up in the moons talking about how they're building androids and sending them down to help them. But we get kind of a picture from the rebellion, at least now, several centuries later. We're talking like way in 5204. The rebellion, or at least this leader of one of these groups, Lily, doesn't feel like they're doing enough to help out. They're talking about how, oh yeah, you guys are doing great down there. We're sending new Yoras. They're going to help y'all out. She doesn't feel like they're helping out enough. They're trying to pull as many scraps together as they can, while at the same time they're noting that these nearby robots are acting weird, they're evolving, which we'll get into that in a minute. But still, eventually, towards the later part of this episode, seeing that, yeah, even though they didn't think they would come to help, 2B and 9S show up. Now, the interesting thing that happens when 2B and 9S show up is obviously Lily isn't trusting of them. Again, it really does feel like Lily feels as if the humanity of council, whatever, have pretty much abandoned them. But additionally, she raises her weapon at 2B and she says number 2. So, I don't know, it's seemingly implying that Lily knows 2B, or maybe possibly what 2B used to be, her previous self. Maybe whatever she depicts, the form that she takes is someone that she knows. That's my theory. But 2B and 9S were sent there to check out the rebellion, and it seems as if they already had a Yora that was assigned to them, but they have lost communication with them, so they got to figure out why that communication's been broke, but additionally, I guess, get an update from them. But even the commander themselves said when they leave the room, good luck down there. Apparently something crazy's happening down there, which, yes, would explain why the Yora that's supposed to be down there with the rebellion is gone. It was kind of cute to see this kind of brief scene before they got their command. 9S apparently is taking care of 2B's maintenance, and she says something to the effect that your voice puts me at ease or something like that, and so he got all super embarrassed about it. But yeah, additionally, 9S is questioning, why are we sending 2B down there to scout out? Again, he kind of already is picking up that something else is happening down there. But yeah, I guess the bigger picture in this whole story is kind of the evolution of the living machines that they're fighting against. It seems to be implying that this has been kind of happening for a long time. Like, this is from the perspective of this one robot, we're seeing like this long span of time. My guess is it seems to be implying that this robot, upon being struck, I don't know, maybe they can do it on their own, but it seems like they're kind of going out of their way to show that this robot was in a fight with some rebellion people. There's kind of this scar in his head, maybe possibly caused some sort of error, but it increases curiosity for things. And so he starts to look around and eventually ends up finding a book. He starts reading the book, and then he starts to partake in the knowledge of mankind. But the main thing that he kind of takes note of is this art that's on this bookmark, a flower. And he eventually finds one of these flowers, and it seems like from that point on, he just really badly wants to make many of these flowers. And then once he finds one, he starts planting seeds, and then apparently other robots find him, and then they all start kind of communicating to each other, and then start to work on this massive area of flowers. But yeah, it kind of sucks because eventually this big massive horde of these living robots decide to kind of just trample right through all the work that he's done, destroy his little brothers, and then eventually, yes, get completely nuked by 2B and 9S coming by to wipe them out. All to the last shot of him reaching out to a flower before ceasing to function. But yeah, like I said, kind of sort of a little tragic in the idea of this robot finally breaking away from the mold of all the other robots, gaining some sort of desire for knowledge and desire for mankind's knowledge, and yes, the image of what I guess the place used to be before it became a battlefield, bringing beauty back into the world. And then ultimately in the end, having it completely trampled by not only his own people, but technically those that they're supposed to be fighting. But I think, yes, the part that starts to kind of confuse me a little bit is the story time stuff. That's where it starts to kind of lose me. The very first segment talks about this volcano erupting and this god appearing from the volcano, which now that I think about it, they did show one shot in this episode of humanity leaving Earth. They taking off in the rocket, which I'm assuming is when they went to the moon. Could that be what the robots themselves seen as an eruption of a volcano? But again, what does that have to do with imparting knowledge upon them at that point? Why does seeing this rocket suddenly become a god that's speaking to them? I don't know. They're machines. They're dumb. I don't know. They're pre-evolved machines. And the god starts talking about essentially different types of emotion. He's saying that it was like the meaning of life. It was all these emotions and stuff was the meaning of life itself. And then I think the second one was where essentially it talks about the fact that machines themselves eventually found this concept of treasures. And obviously acknowledging that with each of these robots, they found something different. It took different shapes, which again, I think in the wake of this robot that we follow the entire episode is in the form of this flower. And again, I understand each one of these ones, besides the fact of what is this god that appeared from this volcano, and it obviously being some sort of form of the machine sort of evolving, understanding things besides just whatever they're commanded to do. But the last one, like I said, it was a little bit weird, and in the idea that it just talks about how it took out their parents, and it keeps showing mother, father, until eventually it shows a whole bunch of robots all consuming information just like this one robot did. And again, like I said, saying at this rate, it's no good. And it's showing this big old mass of them. So my theory really is in the idea that this one robot that we follow this entire episode sort of was the trigger point to these other robots understanding there's something more than just doing what they're doing. Now, granted, it could be a case where this one did it and it was our example of it, whereas all these other ones were doing the same thing. The machines themselves are changing slowly, and they're understanding things besides their own command. And that's kind of what the Resistance is sort of figuring out, is that these robots are acting different. They're sort of evolving. They're figuring out things. They're slowly growing in their own capacity to understand things. And again, they're sort of seeing things outside of their norms. They're finding their own treasure, which again, I think kind of makes it a little bit more dynamic of a world than just it being simply aliens showed up, sent these single-minded robots down to attack humankind. Mankind eventually fights to destroy it, and then they're all saved. No, it's going to be more probably an aspect of these machines themselves evolving in more ways than just positively. They can be evolved to being able to fight back better, or they can evolve to the point of, yes, not wanting to fight. And that sort of makes me curious to what we kind of seen with the first episode with all these robots just kind of standing there. Is it them trying to figure out their own thing? Are they broken? Did their command, whatever robot that commands them, figure out something else and no longer is there to command them? That's sort of where I'm getting to. And it's kind of funny to kind of realize that, yes, that's kind of the same thing that 2B was experiencing with the first episode, or at least she mentioned in the first episode. We're not allowed to have emotions. We are androids. We're the Yorha. We're not supposed to have emotions. And in the second episode, we're sort of seeing the same effect with the living machines. As this one robot finally finds this flower that he recognizes, he gets an error message, detected emotion matrix, and then he puts it back down. But again, he still goes and plants more. So even with the living machines, they're having the same effect as 2B in them, which sort of makes me already kind of go down the theories and the idea that, yes, these androids, the Yorha, whatever, is probably something that is built from the technology of the aliens themselves. They both have that same issue where they both want emotions and they're allowed to have it. Sort of implies they're both kind of from the same core. I kind of forgot to get into it, but yes, my theory on that whole kind of storybook thing towards the later part about the parents and all that kind of stuff The only thing I can really think of is that through them seeking knowledge, eventually the robots themselves realize the importance of like a family. Because he sort of did have that with a lot of these other robots following this one robot. They were calling him Big Brother. They kept calling out to Big Brother. And yes, I guess you can see the same thing from these robots as they evolve. They may introduce to their own minds the concept of a parental figure. So yes, as one of these machines sees another robot as a parental figure and it's destroyed through this constant war, they may actually get the same effect that we as people do. Again, like I said earlier, you introduce emotions that help it evolve, and eventually certain emotions that we use as sort of things that make us act more irrational or more driven come into effect. Teach a robot how to cry, and you can make them vulnerable. Teach a robot to be angry and full of vengeance, and they may act out even more powerful. I guess that's where I'm going. But anyways, that's my trying to figure out Yoko Taro of NieR Automata version 1.1a, the second episode. Hope you guys enjoy this video as always. Looked a lot better than the first episode. No, only one little brief moment of nasty CGI. For the most part, this episode looked really good. Visually, really fantastic. So hope they keep that up. And yes, we did technically get our bad end of the episode, which is don't unequip the OS chip, apparently. Apparently, you can go into the equipment screen and unequip her OS chip, which is kind of funny. I think that's another thing that kind of drives me to want to play the game, is that funny aspect of having these dead ends based on just doing like things like unequipping something from your inventory. Like, why wouldn't you be able to do that? Well, that technically breaks your character. Allowing you to be able to break your character is pretty funny. Anyways, again, that's my thoughts on episode 2. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what you thought of the episode. Again, no spoilers. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top lists. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, and a super thanks button down below. Greatly appreciate everybody it does, and y'all take care.